everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Earned Wisdom for Accomplished Female Leaders. And today I have with me another accomplished female leader. I have Natasha Case with me. Hey, Natasha.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let me tell you guys a little bit about Natasha. She has accomplished quite a bit, and I was reading this and I thought, oh my gosh, I could ask you so many questions. So let me get started on what exactly Natasha has done. So she is the CEO and founder of Lunch Munch, a meal delivery service for kids that aims to make mornings easier for parents. Oh my God. I wish that would have been around when my kids were little, seriously. As a mom of a 2 and 5-year-old, she was driven by the idea of using creative eating experiences to inspire curiosity in even the pickiest of eaters, while also tackling a massive issue for parents around frustrations with packing lunch from a time management, shopping, quality cleaning, and stress guilt perspective. Case is devoted to transformational positive change by creating mission led businesses. In 2009, she created Coolhaus Ice Cream with her wife, Freya. Is it Estreller? Is that how you say her name?
Perfect.
Okay, cool. Because they did not feel represented by the ice cream brands on shelves and knew they could create higher quality and more unique ice cream with a more authentic story. Case remained the CEO until Coolhaus was acquired by Perfect Day under their CPG umbrella company, with a mission to make more sustainable products without compromise in December of 2021. In 2018, she co founded Future Gin, the first 100% female created, distributed, and owned gin, along with her wife and two friends, Amy Atwood and Mary Bartlett. Case has been named Forbes 30 Under 30, Food and Beverage, excuse me, Zagat 30 Under 30, LinkedIn, 10 Under 35 for Food and Leisure, 10 Most Successful Women in Business by Leaders Club, and UCLA's LGBTQ plus 2019 Alum of the Year. Wow, that is very impressive.
Thank
You've
you.
been, you're welcome. So I am totally curious, of course. Did you come out of the womb as an entrepreneur? Like as a child, were you an entrepreneur at all? Like, how did this begin?
It's so funny. I do kind of feel like we probably are born entrepreneurs to some degree because I think there is like an identity kind of persona piece around the way we approach problem solving, the way we maybe see rules and just want to kind of make everything our own. Um, the way I think, as an entrepreneur, you have to have a really strong vision and kind of probably to a certain, maybe crazy degree, lack of fear. So I think from those like very kind of fundamental levels, I guess I think it was always there. I don't think like something changed, but I think that kind of for my generation, I was born in 1983, and kind of I think of myself as like a child of the 90s more or less. Um, I didn't even know what that word was. I didn't know what that word was, and my parents, my mom's an animator, my dad's an architect, so they were very creative, and they had great careers, but it was not as much of like a business house, per se. Like I wasn't like growing up around those conversations, and there wasn't like I think this access to like resources, and so I think like I more kind of it was a process of elimination, I would say, to get to this, which I think is changing. I think that's changing generationally, and also I think for women, like I see more and more like young women who like know all about entrepreneurship and all about what it takes, and they have stories that they can tell, and they can name cool, especially like women entrepreneurs that they want to kind of model their journey after. So maybe I would have like kind of done more with it when I was younger, if that were me, but I can't say enough how glad I am that that shift seems to have happened.
Yeah, I was just curious because usually what I do is I ask women, so what did you want to be when you grew up? But
Oh yeah,
like,
I did not say I want to be like a doctor. I want to be like a sports medicine
ah,
doctor. Making cool. I was like product design. I was like I still love the product, and I believe that the product does drive a lot of success. But I wanted to like make cool medical equipment to like change the game of sports medicine. Quite different.
wow. That's pretty cool though. I mean, that's creative also to me. It is.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, when you were younger, obviously before you established these businesses, well, I guess the first one was Cool House that you established, but what were you doing before that? Were you just working a 9 to 5 job? Like what was your deal before that?
Yeah, my background was all it's funny. I do think we like very much, see what's around us. And I actually studied architecture, but so I went to Berkeley and then I went to UCLA for my master's degree. But I think I always wanted to kind of break down the like, learn how to like best kind of understand what I was going to be challenging with architecture. So like break the rules from within. And I always thought architecture could have so many different like great applications than kind of the more traditional sense. And nothing wrong with that. Like I said, my dad's an architect. He designed our house. It's amazing to be able to like create spaces. But I always just thought, wow, there's so many different things you could do with it. So I want to learn the skill set, and I want to kind of think of just those creative applications. And I really got intrigued. The biggest one that drew me was connecting architecture and food, and how food and design are very linked, and how we eat with our eyes, and packaging, and the stories that can be told, about food through design and vice versa. So that was ended up being kind of my gateway, to become more and more passionate about food and beverage, with that architecture kind of thinking. But that's what led me kind of, I think, away from, what my background was properly. But after I graduated from UCLA, I did work in architecture. I worked for a couple different firms, and I worked for Disney Imagineering, predominantly, which was, again, like traditional architecture, but kind of a different creative application, very story driven. So it all makes sense looking back, like that was
Yeah.
a really great background to have. But what I'm doing today does definitely seem in some ways quite different from the training.
I can see that, but I can see the correlation too. I mean, considering you've stuck with food brands and you were seeing that back then, even though in a different sense. So I think that's pretty
Yes.
damn cool. Yeah. So
Thank you. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things I like to talk about, I want to talk about the businesses that you've had and you do have now. But as an entrepreneur, what have been some of the challenges that you found that you went through? Like, are there any stories that you can share? Because listeners
Yeah.
are female leaders themselves. So, hearing something might
Yes.
inspire somebody.
Well, I mean, just getting, I think, that first business off the ground, like I'll share like the founding story with Coolhaus, which is just bananas. So I mentioned, that I had worked at Disney Imagineering. Well, I started there in summer of 2008. So it was just a few months before the Great Recession took hold, and things were really, really stressful, around the office, people getting laid off, projects getting frozen. So, as part of my interest in food and design, which I was by then calling farchitecture, food plus architecture,
Mhm.
silly sounding word on purpose, I started to make ice cream sandwiches from scratch, and name them after architects. And the idea was to, just kind of lighten the mood for folks at the office. So, like, oh, I'm sorry, you had a rough day. Here's a Mies Vanilla Row. Here's a Minimalism. Here's a Frank Berry, and it was just really this kind of, I guess, passionate hobby. And I met my co-founder, Freya Streller, who we're now married to and have started other businesses together, as you mentioned. She kind of, I think, saw the business potential in what I was doing, and also just was willing to, I think, be a partner because, one challenge was that we were 25 years old and we had no, technical business acumen and nothing to really show for ourselves yet, so, but also then nothing to lose. But just when you're starting a business, there's so much ground to cover. So having someone that you can kind of, you can be mutually dependable is amazing. But anyway, I think we, saw like that there was I think an opening in the clouds, really. Like, as you mentioned, Tracy, just, feeling like the brands out there didn't really have authentic stories and didn't represent us. And there was just this huge disconnect between like the creator and the customer. And also just ice cream was kind of at a low point then. This is mid 2000s, and I think so much has changed with food and the expectation and the quality and uniqueness, and things being artisan and handmade, and all these terms that we kind of take for granted today just weren't really there. And so we just saw this opportunity to, let's just make something ourselves. Let's make the product we want, and let's kind of like have it stand for something, that we can believe in, and that we can understand. And then we just knew the grocery store was going to be too big of a challenge to make
Mhm.
tackle. And we were never going to be able to get a scoop shop because, no one was lending money. There were no more, just I think from a year ago, the economy was suffering from just the way credit was being lent, et cetera. But we thought, we could reinvent the ice cream truck for our generation. And we went home and we Googled, hipster ice cream truck, and like nothing showed up, which is just such a rare occurrence, in any Google search at
Yeah.
this point. So we thought, let's do this. Like, let's go for it. And I think this is a sign that we have to act quickly, because there's no way that someone's not going to also see this and do this. But we had no money and we had no way of raising capital. So we just found a beat up postal van for $2,500, and it had no
Oh my
engine.
God.
So first we just towed it to LA. Yeah, they were definitely selling drugs out of said ice cream truck. And so, we cleaned the whole thing up. And then we thought, we got to go big or go home. Let's, what's the biggest way we can launch this? And we thought Coachella Music Festival. So by some miracle, we get into the festival to be a food vendor. They had never had a truck there before. They had very limited food options at the time. And so how do we get this postal van masquerading as an ice cream truck with no engine to Coachella? Well, we figured out that we got one free 200-mile tow with AAA Platinum. So the morning of Coachella, we pretended the truck broke down, even though it never drove, and AAA towed us to the festival. And the legend
Oh
was
my
born.
God. I love that story. Oh my God.
Yeah. So that was, I guess, like answering your question. I mean, there's so many kind of challenges in that. There's like, just, not knowing, kind of like walking through a wall that you don't know is there, really, just like the naivete, the lack of resources, capital, but just, I think everything against you, like as an entrepreneur, like you see the odds stacked against you, and that's your opportunity, because that stopped so many people before you who maybe weren't fearless or didn't have like a really strong conviction about what they wanted to do. So we overcame a lot to get to Coachella, and then it's not like that first festival was pretty. I mean, we barely hobbled it together,
Mhm.
So we
Did
had
you
someone
sell a
try to
lot of
trade us.
sandwiches there, by the way?
It was okay. We probably made about $5,000 that weekend,
Okay. Mhm.
which was like, okay. We had someone try to trade us a tattoo for a sandwich. He had like a little tattoo kid in his hat, and we said no tattoo. You can just have a sandwich. Anyway, yes, but we did, the thing is that it was proof of concept. It was a minimum viable product. And then after Coachella, I had a friend who said, if you think this, you get that validation, you want to keep going, let me know. I'll do a piece on you guys. Cause he worked for Curbed at the time, the real estate blog, just
Mhm.
connected to Eater. So I gave him the heads up. I said, I think there's something here. Like, we still got a lot to figure out. I think there's something here. Sent him the logo. He wrote this article on us that was like, not even like, it was like actually kind of almost mean. It was like, if you're bored and you have nothing to do, there's these weird architectural ice cream sandwiches, and it's a real head scratcher or something. But it didn't matter. It went viral. And by the time we got back to LA, we had 10,000 Twitter followers. And there was no pay to play back then. It was just pure organic, one day explosion, and that was the real validation. That was like, okay, we are doing this. Like, there's something that we have, like, kind of just opened a door that should not be closed. Now you look back, you're like, oh, of course, like Cool Ice Cream, reinvent the product, reinvent the ice cream truck. It all makes sense. But at the time, it was just, it's completely unknown. And again, the challenge with the entrepreneur, like you're building something from nothing. Nothing is really going to tell you as you're kind of, ramping up, like, oh yeah, like perfect, this is all going to work out with like a bow on top. Like, you're going in
Yeah.
with a lot of question marks, and that's hard.
Yeah, I think that is one of the most difficult things, but it's kind of, I think always when it comes to entrepreneurship, not that it's not about the money, because obviously we all want to be paid, but that's never, I think, the thing that can keep you getting up out of bed in the morning when it's challenging.
Yeah, I think that's true. And like recognizing the privilege, by the way, in not having to do something for the money, and being able to do it for passion, which I do believe, money and success can follow that, because that is, I think, what leads to, creating so many like beautiful visions. But I think if you're at a place where you're waking up every day for something you love, I mean, it's truly so lucky, and there's no amount of money that can compete with that. And I've seen that with so many friends, be successful and sell businesses for hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're just lost, and they're
Yeah,
like, I had the most fun when I was building it. That was the best time of my life. So many people will say that.
that's true. I mean, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like in your case, become serial entrepreneurs, right? It's like you've come up with other concepts and now you have these other businesses. So do you currently you have two businesses concurrently, right? You have the Lunch Bunch and you have the gin, the Future Gin right now?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Coolhaus was acquired at the end of 2021. And I worked at the company that bought it for about 6 months. And I'm still involved, advisor, consultant, and of course, close ties, and obviously want to see Coolhaus continue to succeed as much as possible. Future Gin, founded in 2018. I'm not like, involved in the day to day. My wife is much more involved actually, but it's definitely something that I'm really excited about as far as the potential to change the game in the spirits industry. And I think Future Gin just has a really cool voice and has given back in really exciting ways. For example, donating to the Downtown Women's Center year after year, which is an amazing organization here in LA. And then Lunch Bunch now really, very focused on leading that and making it successful, and just being so close to the problem that you pointed out, having the young kids, so seeing every day and understanding every day how to make our offering and our brand better.
It's so interesting because I think so many people probably get stuck in the problem rather than coming up with a
Mm.
solution. And it seems like you find the problem, or you're finding the problem and you're coming up with the solution on the one hand, right, with the Lunch Bunch. But then you have these other things that, like gin. Okay, so why did you guys choose gin, by the way? Just curious.
Yeah, I think it was showing really exciting growth. There was this, taking off, I think, of like bourbon and whiskey that just sort of came before that, and kind of the small batch, more artisan crafting that in a way is very, I think, inherent in that product. Gin was really showing this like, exciting parabola. And what I think from just like a little bit of like a, I don't know, just practicality standpoint, gin's really interesting because it is a very short um, uh, um, distillation process. It only takes a few weeks, well, like a
Oh,
vodka. However, more like to me, a bourbon or a gin or more kind of complex spirit, the botanical is just can be filled with so many kind of different unique components, and for us, we really were focused on like a California forward profile. So, a Meyer lemon, and the original, distillation had like avocado leaf from one of the founders' yards, and the Meyer lemon was from our yard. Honeysuckle, just really like kind of exciting things. So you can in a few weeks build this like incredible and very distinct profile. And then I do think gin is just a great one for a broad appeal. There's so many different things you can do with it, and we wanted to make a gin that was much more kind of approachable. We were seeing ones on the market that were just really, really complicated and maybe intimidating, and also from a price perspective. So I think that was what we were going for, and just really just telling the story of alternative founders, not men. Everyone at the company is queer, all the founders, and Freya being a woman of color. Just these are things that are just very, very limited existence in that industry.
mhm.
So it's exciting to see Future Gin has grown and is now distributed in multiple states. You can order a bottle online, and it got a great ethos.
It sounds wonderful. So my curiosity, of course, is this had to be a different starting point, and Lunch Bunch had to be a different starting point than Coolhaus was. So,
Yeah,
yeah. So what was, some of the differences for our listeners? What was like the biggest difference?
like as far as the time when that we started them, or
Yeah, in terms of, I mean, obviously, when you guys started Coolhaus, you weren't sure what was going to happen, right? And it was kind of, I mean, it was very bootlegging with the whole getting the postal truck that was the ice cream truck. I love this, by the way, but it's what, when you started Lunch Bunch, you saw a need, but was it so challenging? Obviously financially, maybe it was easier. I don't know, but
Oh,
what
same.
were some of the
Yes.
differences?
Yeah, I definitely think with Lunch Bunch, having the validation of having built a brand with pretty, accelerated growth, and Coolhaus became, nationally distributed, now internationally distributed, in Asia, for example. And just, we dominated it like Whole Foods,
Hmm.
remained great quality, the trucks, the shops, we had a cookbook, we did so many different things. So there's a huge amount of validation as an entrepreneur when you go and do it a second and a third time. And you're not, I don't feel like you're starting from scratch. You kind of have more of your playbook. You have more team members that you can call on and figure out, how you might want to collaborate again, and you kind of already know each other. And I think there's a danger in being too formulaic. You certainly don't want to be like, I don't think like the same team, the same playbook exactly can work every time, but you have
Right.
so much more of like a community, and you have people who are more likely to want to kind of jump in and back you and believe in you because you've done it before. And absolutely the same for raising capital. I think that's a huge, you know, I don't even think for me at that point, that's even where at all the issues lie, is like finding the money. It's just really, how do you then, spend the money in a way that is strategic, that's like a quality kind of thought process that can produce growth or whatever the goals are that everyone's bought in for. That's way, way more difficult than getting the money at this point, even in this stage of the economy. And even as a woman. So I'm lucky in that way, I think. But yeah, it's definitely quite different. And I think businesses are sort of like, I think of Coolhaus was like built from like, the ashes that came kind of from the recession. And like, unfortunately, recessions do cleanse out a lot of businesses that are just troubled, and then you have the businesses that weren't, can survive it. And then you have new businesses that sort of learn from that previous generation. And that was Coolhaus then.
Hmm.
And Future Gin is interesting because it sort of came as the economy was escalating more, in 2018, and survived absolutely COVID, I think, very gracefully, moving from bars to what's called like off premise, so more like retail shops. So
Hmm.
really good sign the way that it survived and thrived. People did drink a lot in COVID.
Yeah.
Um, and then now with like, I mean, it's like the world's alcohol supply was like gone,
Hmm.
which is also great that you can make gin quickly. And then with Lunch Bunch, I do see it as this new generation of brands. What are we learning from the previous generation, from the voice, from the brand, from even like, Lunch Bunch is a last mile delivery. Like we're based in LA, and so everything's like local, fresh, ready to eat, and we're delivering like last mile delivery. So it's like logistics company that can deliver, all around LA. And now we actually expanded to Orange County and Ventura. But that whole concept of last mile delivery has been very much reinvented and changed, over the last 5 years. And part of that was COVID driven. If there's something that you want to be able to get it in like 30 minutes or less from whatever it is, a restaurant or like the Go Puffs and the Fast AFs of the world, So we're very much like, there's so much new technology to be able to allow you to do that in a very, very kind of like turnkey way that just wasn't there before. And everything about like websites and how you understand data and how we can understand our subscribers, and understanding different cohorts and what's working for you and what isn't. I mean, businesses are very much, I think, a product of the time, and the businesses that succeed are the ones that really do learn the best from the previous generation and embrace not only what's going on now, but like predict where it's going in the future.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that, especially, well, they keep saying we're going into a recession, but then you read something that says, oh, we're not quite there. So I tend to
Yeah.
try to tune that out anyway. But something you said, that I was going to ask you about, because I'm writing a book right now on the secure female leader. And one of the things I do is a lot of research.
Oh,
And so one of the things that I've come across is there's a statement. I don't know if it's more media because of research I've done. There's studies too, but anyways, talking about how women have trouble asking for money, how women entrepreneurs don't go and look for investors. They're too afraid. They don't feel like it's not necessarily that their business doesn't measure up, but it's a lack of confidence. So what would you say to that, in terms of your own experience, in terms of women listening who might be, at that position of, gosh, do I go and get investment or do I just keep bootstrapping it?
Yeah, I think this is like a pretty like loaded issue because I think what happens is women um, feel that they need to prove themselves before they ask for anything versus men are, believe that they already know, what's up. So the money is just kind of the afterthought. Women also have a very different relationship to failure. What happens if it doesn't work out? If I lose someone's money, and that's not okay. So you limit the risk, and you kind of keep it kind of closer to the vest, and you keep it more or less on yourself to create this business to fund it. So I think there's just a lot in there in terms of how women are socialized, even before you get to the part of like, most investors are men, so of course they're going to relate to more male founders, male driven business concepts, yada yada. Like there's it's almost like
Hmm.
that is like its own huge problem. But if you like back it up, I don't think women, I don't think we think that any kind of rejection is okay. Meanwhile, men are like, oh, you want to go to prom, ask 20 girls, one of them's going to say yes. It's a
Yeah.
numbers
Yeah.
game. So I think that like, first of all, one thing that to like kind of to flip it on its head is as far as even the ask, it's not, I don't look at it as you're like taking someone's money and like, oh, like it's like this like gift for you. Like you're the gift to them. Like the easiest thing to do is to write a check. Like the saying is like money is cheap. Like it is kind of true. We're like, so much easier for someone to write a check than for you as a creator, as a founder, to think of something cool, to do the market research, to validate the concept, to build it, to grow your team. It's exhausting. It's so much
Hmm.
work to build a company. Someone's like, hey, here's a check, so I get to be involved. Like, lucky them. And you
Right.
know what? It may not work out. And they're not a good investor if they're not prepared that it might not work out. And especially in a high growth startup, the odds are it won't, especially in certain industries, the odds are they may never see that money again. They're taking a gamble, they're taking a risk. It's the highest risk. If they don't like risk, then they can take the money and put it many other places, like a CD, or, like just there's, many, more reliable things than, and it's true, than an entrepreneur saying, I have a really cool idea, I'm going to do this. We're, all going to get rich together. It does, of course, sometimes happen.
Hmm.
So I think that's a really big piece, is you have to think of it as like you're giving them the gift, that they're lucky enough to maybe have this huge upside. So, and then, no, and all of that, like it's okay. Like a lot of that can just be, it's not going to work, right now. And
Hmm.
you may have to go back in a year, you have to go back in 3 years, like, kind of taking your personal stuff out of it and knowing like you're not a failure if something you try doesn't succeed. It's just like more like, how do you respond to that? Can you make it better? Like for example, with Coolhaus, we had opened, we were based in LA. We opened trucks in New York and Miami and Texas. Miami was in some ways a good market, but very difficult to operate remotely. And, we just were like, we made a call very quickly. We're like, this is not working. This is just not moving the dial enough for the efforts it's taking. What are we going to do with this truck and this operation? We had people who had reached out who said, we would love to run, Dallas market as a license. Here's all the reasons we're qualified to do it. We run other food truck companies. Great. We actually sold them the Miami trucks and all the kind of setup of the business, and you move on, so it's like, then that
Hmm.
became an exercise in like licensing and building the business in Texas, which ended up being more fruitful and a better, use of everyone's time in terms of growing the business. So I think a lot of it is like that. It's you do have to accept that there's going to be many failures along the way, and you're not a failure. So I don't know. And then for the one last thing I'll say about it that I do think is interesting for me, I think it's actually been a little bit easier as like a queer founder, because I think that one, there is like, it when I have been in a room, as with raising money, it pretty much always happens, um, filled with men and male investors. Like I was, and
Hmm.
there was one group of raising money for, it was like 19 dudes and me. And one
Hmm.
thing is I do find it like a little weirdly like less threatening for men because it's like there's like feel like maybe I don't know they can relate more. I don't know what it is
Hmm.
entirely. It's really interesting. But maybe relating more and maybe feeling like I don't know. Maybe there's just inherently like a more difficult relationship between like a straight woman and like a straight guy at work, and a fear around misinterpreting something or whatever. But I feel like that has actually been helpful for me, and also for me, like I think maybe I don't know, just the questioning of my own identity in that way was also just kind of a superpower in business
Hmm.
because there is so much. There's just you've had to take risks and you've had to come out, and some people may reject you. I don't
Oh
know.
yeah.
Like I've talked to other queer founders, and I think there is a different journey for every woman, whether you're a queer woman, woman of color. So I do mean that as like a granule of hope for the queer founder, that like I think that actually can be truly a superpower in growing your business and raising money, and to hopefully own that identity as you do it.
I think it's important for women to own their own identity, period, because I think a
Yeah,
lot of times women get, and human beings tend to do this anyways, right? We take external bias and we make it internal, and then we're reacting to the story in our head about what we think other people think, and then that makes us inconsistent, and it can hold you back, basically.
yeah, definitely.
So, before we go, I would love if you could share just a few final tips to any female leaders out there, that, you feel could help them along on their journey.
Yeah, I think one is I do love to say you walk through a wall when you don't know it's there. So I know I mentioned that, but basically what that means is you don't have to know everything about what you're doing, in order to kind of get started. In fact, you can get to a state of analysis paralysis. And sometimes having a little bit of naivete allows you to just sort of, break through kind of a barrier that you weren't even aware was there. And that lack of awareness is the superpower in doing that. I would meet people, particularly with like the ice cream business all the time. They have 20, 30, 40 years of experience, but that can also be limiting because
Hmm.
they did it the way they did it for their generation. And that's not how brands are operating today, So it's okay if you don't know everything, or if you're a young founder, that can actually work in your favor. And I think really, really big, especially as women, like, again, I talked about like keeping it like things closer to the vest. And I think fear of failure and risk can make us want to keep things smaller. But I think if nothing else as an exercise, think about like the biggest manifestation of what you want to build. What is the biggest this could be, and write it down. Write down 2-year, 5-year, 10-year vision for both your business and yourself. I like in the present tense because it really like takes you to that moment. And I think especially for women, the yourself part is important because we do tend to like take so much on. Like I don't know how we do it as women. I look at some women who are just have so much on their shoulders and they just get through it, but I think we forget to like be selfish and take care of ourselves, especially as entrepreneurs. So like, what do you want out of this? Is this going to give you what you need, or are you going to build this great company but then you're never really paying yourself or never having a vacation? Like, is that okay with you? So making sure that you factor yourself into that vision, I think, is key. And I have to say, when I've written things down, I even look at things I wrote when I was like 11, like I used to
Hmm.
do a little like, and it's like a good amount of it has come true. It's actually eerie. Like there's something
Really?
about the accountability. Yeah.
I love that. I
Kind
love
of
that.
funny.
It's that
Yeah.
synchronicity.
Yeah.
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 Definitely. I have loved this. This has been so great. And I know that people listening are going to love this as much as I do. So, if anybody wanted to get in touch with you, where would they find you?
So I'm on Instagram, Natasha Case, and we're Join Lunch Bunch. We're a very small company, so if you'd like to reach out there, let us know what you think of what we're building with Lunch Bunch. Or yeah, I think that those are probably the best ways to share my contact.
Awesome. Wonderful, Natasha. Thank you again so much for coming today. And anybody listening, I hope you're inspired as I'm inspired by listening to Natasha. Take care, and I'll see you next time.